Welcome back to Human Trafficking, a battle against modern-day slavery. The crime is so reprehensible, it's rarely talked about. A force driving human trafficking through and to Montana is the Bakken, an oil deposit larger than the state of Texas.
Any place in the world where there's intensive resource extraction, prostitution and trafficking follow close behind. Whether it's the oil pipelines in Russia and the Caucasus, or whether it is oil and gas extraction in the Bakken, you've got large groups of men who may be exploited or not themselves in these conditions, huge amounts of money being generated, and women being trafficked in to service the men along the pipeline. Prostitution is where trafficking happens. People sometimes think it's a different thing than prostitution.
Obviously, not everyone coming here is coming here to work legitimately, let's put it that way.
Sydney Police Chief Frank DeFonso is on the Montana side of the Bakken, and he knows with all that money comes crime.
A lot of them are coming here to feed off of the progress and the activity that's going on here, and to try to make a living in ways that aren't legal.
This year, oil companies produced their billionth barrel of oil. One oil company estimated the formation contains 900 billion barrels of oil. Yes, 900 billion. With all that oil, man camps grew throughout the area, and oil workers with a lot of money and little else to do. Like many in local law enforcement in the Treasure State, they do not see it as a major problem.
I cannot say that I've actually seen or have seen anything come across my desk that indicates that that we have issues with human trafficking, especially in the sex slave and sex trafficking type things.
Because of the high level of sophistication, much of law enforcement is several steps behind the traffickers.
I'm uncomfortable that something of that nature could be happening in our community, and that we would not be able to recognize it. Without training, we're not going to be able to recognize any of it, and I want my officers to be able to go out here at night, and when they're working, if there are things that they think are peculiar or things that need to be looked into, that we would be able to get to the right people and get some assistance in handling it.
Chief DeFonso is not alone. Local law enforcement across the state of Montana is in the dark about human trafficking.
On local level, we don't see or hear too much in human trafficking. It's probably more on the state level or outside of our area.
In a recent roundtable discussion in Billings by local and federal law enforcement, the Billings Chief of Police, along with the Yellowstone County Sheriff, reflect the situation in a lot of departments.
Well, we're certainly mindful that that situation is out there, and as the Attorney General indicated, what we're really looking for is education, because it's really foreign to us. I mean, when you talk about human trafficking, our perception is that's an international problem. Yes. And it never really hit home. Well, now we know that that's not the case.
We only have so many resources, and we recognize that we can't do all of it by ourselves. And that's why it's so important that the FBI partner with our local counterparts across the country, wherever they may be.
And we in the United States think that we eliminated slavery with the passage of the 13th Amendment following the Civil War. But now we're seeing that that is not necessarily the case.
Wayne Stenjem knows about human trafficking. He is the Attorney General of North Dakota, on the other end of the chain.
We know what's going on, and we know that because we are arresting people who are involved in the sex trade, both in providing the service as well as in being the John, the person out seeking the service. We know that those exist.
North Dakota, the Peace Garden state, is home to a majority of the Bakken, and law enforcement knows it's an ongoing battle.
It is real. I mean, they definitely need to be aware that this is something that is here, is something that is happening now.
And help is exactly what Captain Verlin Quandy of the Williams County Sheriff's Office needs. It's a sentiment reflected by law enforcement all over the country. His department sits in the town of Williston, right in the heart of the Bakken and the frontline battle against human trafficking.
We are aware of it more so than we have been in the last few years, and we're working towards trying to get better at recognizing what we're looking for and to hopefully be more proactive and hopefully more foresight into what we're going to be doing to combat it.
Making it harder, Quandy and his deputies struggle to battle not just trafficking, but all crime. The town of Williston has seen incredible growth. In 2010, the population of the sleepy North Dakota town was 14,700 people. In 2 years, it grew by 25% to more than 18,000, and the following year, an estimated 21,000 people. That's 40% in 3 years. With that exponential growth has come an exponential growth in crime, including slavery.
10 years ago, this isn't something that we would have even thought about or had to consider, and within the last 2 or 3 years, it's becoming a lot more prevalent than we would have ever imagined.
Making it difficult to crack down is the crime itself, as it doesn't draw a lot of attention.
It can be challenging to locate because you're maybe talking about interactions between an individual. Let's say you have the female and then a John that makes this interaction. There's no victim to that directly at that time between what they're doing at the moment, so there's not going to be an individual that's going to report an incident.
I think perhaps some in Williston would like to deny that it exists here, but it is here. My observation is either that you prosper from the Bakken or you're a victim of the Bakken.
Pastor Chris Wallstad of the Life Church of Assembly of God has seen his town change.
We've even seen some of those coming out of human trafficking or being rescued from human trafficking within the walls of our church. And then we've seen on the other side of that, Johns that have been arrested in sting operations reaching out for help as well. So it's landed right on our doorstep.
Pastor Wallstad can see what some law enforcement can't.
The prize of the Bakken is that there's oil and that there's money. That's the prize. So something has brought them here, and then that's brought its own unique set of problems, because now you have money, you have men, you have opportunity, and all of that combined creates a perfect environment for trafficking and drugs and gang activity. It's all here in Williston, North Dakota right now.
Because it is all there, he feels it may just be too much for law enforcement to handle.
They're so overwhelmed with domestic violence and with burglaries and those types of things that they sometimes can't even address traffic issues because they don't have enough people on force. And so sometimes I think the bigger issues, my opinion again, they just get slid to the back, not intentionally, but because of the demands on the other side of things.
Even as a man of God, the pastor struggles with not just the traffickers, but those who partake in the true victims.
On the other side of the human trafficking, those that are victimizing women, you might have to shut off the camera for me to say what I think, in all honesty. I'm infuriated by that. Yeah.
Everything that I was set up to believe negatively about life and myself and my sexuality and my value, I bought into it hook, line, and sinker.
Wendy Lazenko knows the ugly truth about human trafficking. She was once a victim, but now she is trying to help others.
I'm also a survivor. I'm part of the National Survivor Network. I experienced exploitation when I was 13 years old through trafficking as a young runaway, and that led me into a pretty long life cycle of sexual exploitation and trafficking.
Wendy's tale is not unlike Amber's or other victims.
I had a lot of those existing vulnerabilities. I had suffered sexual abuse as a child from a very young age. Grew up in a single-parent family home, very dysfunctional, broken home. And so started running away at a really, really young age.
Then she met up with another woman who she befriended, who was actually recruiting for her older boyfriend.
I was taken to a party where she groomed me beforehand. I had no idea that I was going to be sold for sex that night. Where it was sexual exploitation and trafficking was where I had someone who was over me, bringing me men to have sex with in exchange for money, not receiving that money, being punished for not doing what I was asked to do, all in exchange for a love.
That is one of the difficulties with escaping the life.
You have these pimps that will go out and recruit these girls, and they will offer them love, affection. They'll offer them, clothes, jewelry. They'll do anything they can basically to try to bribe them and said, look, if you come and you be with me, I will give you all these clothes, I'll buy you all this money, I care for you, I love you.
But that love is a false dream.
It becomes a pattern in the brain. They don't know if it's good or bad. They just know it's happened. So when it happens again, it's just another part of their life, and that's part of the danger.
Stephanie is another human trafficking survivor on the other side of the line in Montana, and understands why it is so hard to get out of the life or trust anyone.
I couldn't explain to them the anger, the hatred, the shame, the guilt that was going on inside.
Stephanie experienced sexual exploitation at an early age.
When I was about 9, I started running away from home because I didn't know how to communicate. I'd been told, don't you say a word, don't you do this.
By 13, she was a part of the dark underworld.
I didn't have a lot of normal Johns. I remember being terrified, just terrified at what was going to happen. And they weren't normal, it wasn't right. And you could feel it when they came in the room. So there's a difference between a John and people that have gone over the edge.
Even if she or any other girl wanted to get out.
If you don't do this, I'm going to go get your little girl, or your family, or whatever their leverage is.
It's very difficult for these young individuals to get out of this lifestyle the way they've been manipulated. They might have a drug addiction that's induced by the traffickers. They've been emotionally manipulated, and so it can happen anywhere, and we have a lot of anecdotal information about it happening in Montana as well.
When we return, we delve into another form of human trafficking, labor, and the shocking story about one victim.
My first case of human trafficking was a girl, a 15-year-old.